Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, I'm John, this is Mania Truder, and Fallout 4 exists! It's real! I'm so excited, but then I realised I shouldn't be excited. We just now move on to the next stage of worrying, which is we now have to worry, is Fallout 4 going to be any good? And on that topic, I wanted to put together a video, a great big discussion video. I've never really done one of these before, but I really want to do one of these. I want to just go over a big list of things that I do and don't want to see in Fallout 4. And I really want this to be like a proper discussion. I'm really interested to what like everyone has to say about this. So like I'm going to be like reading every single comment and like having a chat with all of you about your ideas. So like if you've got any like ideas or think my ideas are stupid or like any of them, or if you have any other suggestions at all, please do get involved in the comments. I will be like chatting with everyone down there this evening as much as I can. So yes, without further ado, let's leap into my 30 things that I do and don't want to see in Fallout 4. Number 1, let me suck at the game. To give you an example of what I'm talking about here, I've just created this new character. This character here is No-Eyed Pete. He has 1 in strength, 1 in perception, and 1 in agility. I also took good-natured. He literally has the worst gun skill that can exist. You can see there his gun skill is at 4. You cannot have a worse gun skill than him. And you know what he can do? He can just crouch down and start one-shotting bottles. Excellent. 3 in a row. Absolutely perfect. This is a problem I've always kind of had with Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. I think they were both too afraid to let you suck at stuff that you hadn't specialised in. Even if you've got no skills in guns, you can pick up any gun, and sure, it may not be as accurate when you're sniping it, but you can still basically use it. Even if you've got no skill in repair, you can still maintain your guns pretty well. No skill in science, you can still basically interact with most pieces of technology just fine. I think the game, your base character, should be at a much lower level of competence at literally everything. That's just my take on it. I think, yeah, the game should not be afraid to tell you, no, you suck. You literally do not know how to use a gun. I want a character with 4 in guns to half the time I press the trigger, he doesn't even fire. And when he does, he definitely doesn't hit flipping what he's aiming at. Because look at this guy. Fine, it's not perfect, but look at him. Look, how is he possibly doing this? How is he reloading like this? He can just chamber another round that quickly. And he hits pretty much what he's aiming at. It's utterly baffling for a character who's never held this gun before. And just has no skill in repair, no skill in guns whatsoever. That's what I want to change more than anything else. I want my character to suck until I spend time practicing or learning. Maybe your character ought to be really crappy at reloading until you find someone who can show you how to reload more quickly. Maybe there need to be more kind of, one-off perks that you gain by interacting with characters more than just perks that you gain by leveling up. Oh, and while we're on the topic of the early game, I think it's worth taking a lesson from Fallout 3 here. Obviously, you're seeing a character that's just left the vault, so the first area, Vault 101 being equivalent to Goodsprings. When you first left the vault in Fallout 3, the most powerful weapon that you had was damage 7. Either the baseball bat or the 10mm pistol that's in full condition that you get given if you choose to take that. Relatively speaking, in Fallout New Vegas, when you leave Goodsprings, you can be in much better shape. You can have picked up some alright leather armour, but more importantly, you can have picked up a full-strength plasma pistol and some mods for a couple of guns too. You can actually be in very strong shape. I feel like in New Vegas you might be a little bit too strong when you leave town. Obviously that kind of depends on tone. If you're going for hopeless, outgunned, lonely, desperate existence, go for the Fallout 3 strategy. If you want to go for a more fun adventure game where you're master of your own destiny and building the world up as you want around you, then go for Fallout New Vegas. But even then I feel like you could be a little bit overpowered when you are leaving Goodsprings. Number 2, we need to make some changes to companions. And I've decided to come with Arcade to demonstrate this. So we're playing the game on hard mode right now. We're playing the game on hard mode, and I'm travelling with Arcade. A doctor. Let's be clear, he's a doctor and he's wearing a lab coat. Hey guys, we're over here. Oh, there he is. Arcade is on the case. And, oh, he's murdered one of them. Oh, and he's blown the head clean off another. Now, oh no, he's already found someone else to shoot at too. Oh, he's murdered, okay, so now he's murdered 6 people. And how many are left? Oh, he's got his eye on someone else. And the Fiends are just being destroyed. Okay, he's pretty much cleared out a Fiend camp there. He's pretty much cleared out the camp. Companions are broken and overpowered. And obviously I know companion nerve tied to charisma is supposed to be a thing. My character has a charisma of 2. And yet that was what he just did. And what's his health like? Oh, it's still pretty much full, actually. That's how bloody tough companions are. They're ridiculous. And they need a massive step change to be less powerful. Right, let's find some more trouble. Now, obviously, health is the obvious thing that you could do to fix companions, but I think there's more to that we can do as well, quite frankly. I think loyalty is a big thing that we need to do, because right now in New Vegas and Fallout 3, basically you go up to someone, you say, hey, we should probably travel together, and the person says yes, and thereafter they will follow you pretty much literally into hell and back without any problem whatsoever. So here we are, I'm just running into the middle of a flipping Fiend camp, clearly with no intention of doing any fighting myself. And Arcade is totally okay with me. He is, completely fine with just following me into this situation. He'll just, do all the fighting for me, even if I do nothing for him. And this is a man I've done nothing for. I literally just walked up to him with a speech check of 70 and said, hey, you should probably, travel with me. It'll be fun and interesting. And he just did it. This man has no reason to follow me. I think followers in Fallout 4 should, if they come with you, they should come with you purely for a very specific reason until such time as you've actually earned their loyalty. You should have to do things to earn their loyalty. They should refuse to follow you into ridiculous environments. So I think Arcade, when he joins you, should have a crappy pistol and do almost no damage with it. He should be useless until you've actually spent time, you should have to train him. And he should be able to train you as well. You should be able to effectively be, if you like, swap perks. I just think it needs a major overhaul. And I don't exactly know how it should be done. I really would be interested to hear your theories as to how we fix companions in Fallout 4 in the comments. Because I think the current status quo, companions are ludicrously overpowered. Number 3, bring back weapon crafting. This was one of my favourite bits of Fallout 3. It was amazing. And it was just so satisfying to have your own weapons. And not that, but they were really good weapons too, no matter what sort of weapons they were. Whether it was the shish kebab, a flaming sword, or the Deathclaw gauntlets. Or, of course, everyone's favourite, just random stuff out of the rocket launcher. In fact, the lack of weapon crafting is, to my mind, the single biggest thing that they took out of Fallout New Vegas that they shouldn't have done. I loved it. And I think there's a few reasons for that. Firstly, you're more attached to weapons that you build by yourself. I think that's just a thing. Like, if you've made it yourself, you feel more attached to it. 2, they made a big effort to actually make the weapons that you built yourself more fun and more interesting. So while weapons you're picking up of enemies were just, endless hunting rifles, 10mm pistols, etc., etc. If you actually went your own way, you could get, flaming swords and the rocket launcher and other stuff that was actually genuinely kind of really fun and interesting. And perhaps most importantly at all, and this was a very clever bit of work that they did, crafting your own weapons in Fallout 3 got you more powerful weapons earlier than you'd be able to any other way. Bear in mind that you can get the schematics for the rocket launcher basically at the very beginning of the game. The moment you first reach Megaton, you can pick up the schematics for the rocket launcher. And relative to the other weapons you're going to have at that point in the game, it's immensely powerful. Shish kebab, when you pick it up, because you can pick that up really early from weapons traders too, there's a good chance that's going to be the single most powerful thing that you've actually got when you pick it up as well in terms of melee weapons. It's just brilliant that, there was a real incentive to make your own weapons because they were unique, they were fun, they were interesting, and they were actually very, very powerful. And I honestly think that definitely ought to be coming back in Fallout 4. And while we're talking about crafting, number 4, let's have more unique, interesting variations of armor. So let me tell you how my playthroughs of Fallout New Vegas very often go, which is get leather armor from Chet. Pick up the reinforced leather armor as early as possible, normally from that raider just a little bit to the south of Helios 1. Swing by Durable Dunsat Caravan and pick up the Van Graff's combat armor. Pretty much wear that till I'm ready to go into power armor when I do the Brotherhood relatively early on. And that's probably pretty much it in the base game of New Vegas. That's probably pretty much all I'll wear, and it's not particularly interesting. The Fallout New Vegas DLCs, I think, probably did the best job with this, where they added all these interesting new variations of armor. So all the stuff that you get out of Honest Hearts is really cool and really interesting. Old World Blues is probably the best of the bunch for giving you extra stuff like unique interesting weapons and unique interesting items, like especially all the different doctors' glasses and all the different doctors like gloves and stuff. I think some of those are really, really interesting. So just more unique, interesting variations of clothes, particularly ones that give you unusual benefits. And while we're on it, let's be honest, I actually want armor crafting to be a thing. I actually want proper, full-on armor crafting to be a thing. Like I just said previously, I want weapon crafting to be properly back from Fallout 3. And I know there is some weapon crafting in Fallout New Vegas, but it's like nowhere near as good. It's more like just creating slight variants of existing weapons. But I want full-on armor crafting to be a thing now. I want to be able to, like, you know, ransack a building and pick up some scrap metal and take that with my leather armor to a workbench and hammer on some metal shoulder pads, and that to give me an additional little bit of resistance. I want to be able to salvage some scrap electronics, attach those to my armor, and that give me like +5 damage threshold against energy weapons. I want stuff like that. I just want more unique armor that I can build and modify and add to myself that gives me some small advantages, so that I actually have a reason to care about my own armor more than just waiting for the point in the game where I get the next clear step up that I'm just going to start using. Also, while we are talking about clothing, number 5, I want better clothing in general. This is a trait I picked up in Skyrim, I admit, where I liked wearing my armor while I was out in the field, but when I actually got into town, I quite liked, putting on some civilian gear. And I want better civilian clothing in Fallout, especially for the female characters. The male characters are okay, but let's have a look at some of the wonderful things you can wear as a woman character. So here we have the pre-war casual wear, the pre-war relaxed wear, the pre-war spring outfit, and the pre-war park stroller outfit. And you'll probably notice that they're all absolutely hideous. They're frumpy, they're inelegant, they just look horrible. You don't want to be running around dressed like this at all. They're just really, really awful. And New Vegas wasn't much better. New Vegas, the DLC made it a bit better for things like the Vera Keys outfit from Dead Money. That made it a little bit better, but just women did not have anything good to wear in these games. Please fix that. Give us something a little bit more sensible. Or at least give us the Tunnel Snake outfit back, because that did at least look pretty darn good on female characters. Number 6, factions. Let's keep factions. Factions were amazing. Factions were the single greatest thing added into New Vegas that weren't really properly in Fallout 3. I love the faction system in New Vegas. I love, like, the first time you run into those NCR traders heading south towards Novak and the Legion attack them because they're NCR aligned. It's just brilliant, and we need to keep that. It's such a cool little thing. So I just desperately want the faction system to stay in. If anything, I want it to be taken to a bit more of an extreme than we saw in Fallout New Vegas. I want the factions to be more busy and proactive. I want more instances where different factions will accidentally run into each other, just creating kind of ad hoc skirmishes between the factions. And I don't want that to be staged. I want it to just sort of happen organically, where just occasionally you'll run into one faction that turns out to just run into another and they don't like each other, and they'll have a shootout right there and then, and you get to, like, get involved on either side if you want, and then if you do, they speak to you and they give you rewards. I think the faction system really helps the world feel like nice and big and alive. It just adds so much replayability to the game as well, the fact that you can redo it with all the different factions and discover all the different secret faction quests, and yeah, it just makes it a completely different game from game to game. So absolutely keep the faction system. We do not even need that many changes from Fallout New Vegas. Number 7, let's have the Brotherhood being complete and total assholes again. Yes, I had problems with Fallout 3's Brotherhood. It was the fact that they decided to go completely into moral paragon, save the wasteland, stop the super mutants. It was problematic to me that there was such a massive shift in Brotherhood. New Vegas fixed that a little bit. Their Brotherhood, the first time you rock up to them, assuming you didn't do it with Veronica, they strap a bomb collar on you and tell you to effectively go and deal with one of their enemies for them. That was fine. But honestly, the representation of the Brotherhood I was most happy with in the last generation was actually the Outcasts. Given the Outcast relationship with you is they'll work with you insofar as they'll take technology off your hands, they'll work with you if it furthers their goals, but they're going to keep calling you a savage anyway, and incidentally, there's no bloody chance in hell they're ever going to, you know, actually let you join them. They're not ever going to think more positively of you. They were just going to be massive dicks about it the whole time. Just, yeah, I quite liked the way the Outcasts operated. So, let's have a bit more of that, shall we? There we are. I'm going to say that was my kill. That's not to say that in the new game I want the Brotherhood to be kind of so distant and isolationist that you basically can't do any relationship with them. In many ways, perhaps New Vegas had a pretty good balance, but maybe I'd like them to be just slightly more jerkish and isolationist and never quite willing to fully accept you as one of their own, no matter how much you work with them. Let's just get them back to their isolationist, I hate everyone who's not a member of the Brotherhood, you're all savages and can't be trusted style of ethos. Number 8, money. One of the big problems with Fallout 3 was though you had a ton of caps by the end of the game, there was nothing really to worth bother spending it on, quite frankly. Guns you could repair yourself, you didn't need anyone else to do that, and there weren't really any good guns to buy. Fallout New Vegas solved that problem very nicely with the Gunrunner's Arsenal expansion, where all of a sudden, even if you had like 50,000 caps, you actually had something useful to actually buy with them. And whether that takes the form of ludicrously powerful nuke launchers, were for 26,000, flaming swords for almost 18,000 caps, rapid-fire silenced weapons for 13,000, or a hilarious power fist that causes explosions for anyone who's been critical killed with it for almost 30,000 caps. It was just wonderful that we had the ability to actually spend all this lovely money that we were carting about. It made it so that it was still worth scavenging and selling even in the late game. Whereas I think in Fallout 3, once you'd picked up a few really powerful weapons that you could just find lying around, there just wasn't any point to money anymore. So there was no point really looting or selling or anything. So something like Gunrunner's Arsenal, fantastic. If anything, maybe don't do it like the GRA, where all of a sudden everyone in the entire game has a huge number of really powerful guns at their disposal. But maybe just kind of scatter a few more really powerful guns across a few traders, just so if we save up money, we actually are rewarded for it by being able to buy really powerful guns way earlier than be able to find them. Because I think part of the joy of Fallout isn't just, you know, hide immensely good rewards in obscure places, though let's actually do that, let's reward exploration, but let's, for people who aren't so good at exploring and actually just kind of have instead found different ways of making money by doing quests, let's reward those people too by giving them the ability to buy ludicrously powerful weapons, even if they don't want to, you know, venture into the Deathclaw Sanctuary or whatever. Number 9, I know this one's going to be a little bit controversial, but ladies and gentlemen, it's time to clean up the Pip-Boy interface. I'm sorry, but it's not very good. Here we have a situation where there are 3 tabs, and with each of those tabs, there are 5 sub-tabs, and within each of those sub-tags, there's vertical scrolling. Though that would of course be tolerable if anything else made a huge amount of sense. Let's say in weapons, why can't I filter to say weapons that are high damage but low DPS versus high damage or high DPS? Why does it always have to be alphabetical? The world map, why can't I filter to only items of a particular description? Like, for example, if I want to filter to just shops or just towns or just NCR environments. Well, I can't do that either. Instead, I just have to kind of search through the map in roughly the area I know I want to go to. And if you want to find information about a quest that you've already done, then God flipping help you finding it, because I hope you remember in what order you did every single quest that you did, because you're going to have to, because that's the order they go down here. I also spent, I think, my first 2 playthroughs of Fallout New Vegas with no idea how to mod weapons, because I missed the fact that obviously you have to go to the weapon in the item screen and then press LB to mod, because it's just hidden away on the right there. But in such a crowded interface with so much information on screen, it was so easy to overlook that I completely missed it. And I spent multiple playthroughs of Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas not realising that on console you could hotkey, because again, it just isn't obvious, it's just hidden over on the side there. It's not a good interface, and we need to completely throw it out and start again. We can still have a Pip-Boy. I know this is, you know, iconic, and it's important we still have a Pip-Boy, and we still have things with this art style that's still got this kind of old-fashioned grainy look. But this particular interface is unhelpful. It's just awful, and for new players, it's a really bad experience. So I'm sorry, we need to throw this out and start again with something much better in Fallout 4. Number 10, multiplayer, or the thing I am most scared of when it comes to Fallout 4. First things first, let's get that out of the way. Fallout 4 flipping better not be an MMORPG. Please, for the love of God, not an MMO. Do not do an Elder Scrolls Online. Please, please don't. Just not that. Anything but that. But I'm scared of multiplayer in Fallout 4 anyway, quite frankly. And it kind of depends what tone that they decide they want to go for, really. The thing is, if Fallout 4 follows New Vegas' style of being a kind of big, exciting, adventure-y game where you're like the master of your own destiny, you're deciding who ought to be king in this new exciting world that you're slowly building up and you have massive amounts of control over, multiplayer co-op would be fine. Multiple people kind of going in. Maybe, in fact, you know, two of you, maybe one of working for opposite factions, one of you working with the NCR, one of you working for Legion, or some equivalent like that, might actually be really good fun, really interesting, where actually you're kind of leading troops around and you're actually working against each other. Some kind of counter-operative mode. Now that could be amazing. Or a cooperative mode, I think in Fallout New Vegas would work out just fine as well. So I wouldn't have any problem with that. You know, just kind of running around New Vegas, blowing everyone's heads off together, if that's what you want to do. That'd be fine. That'd be fun. However, if you're going to be doing the Fallout 3 style of game, the kind of the lonely, desperate, barely surviving, terrified of being picked off by things much stronger than you atmosphere, then co-op would be a disaster, because it would completely undermine the loneliness of it all. So I think you've really got to choose very carefully. If there is going to be Fallout 3 style atmosphere, there can't really be multiplayer. I don't see how that would work. If you're going to go for Fallout New Vegas, go for it. I'm all up for it. In fact, some sort of weird faction-based system for cooperative or counter-operative, I think could actually be really good fun. Number 11 brings me here to Vault 22 in New Vegas. And what I want is alternative solutions for weird builds. Some of you may recall in Vault 22, obviously, when you rescue Keely, she insists that the spores need to be destroyed, and is pretty insistent on it. Unless, of course, you happen to have a science of, I believe it's 70. If you pass a science check of 70 with her, she's convinced that you know enough about science to be trusted with the copy of the data that you took earlier in the vault, and thus are allowed to just leave with it. Which I think is a fantastic alternative solution for her to kind of just come up with. The fact that you've come up with a scientist, she's worried about data escaping into the world, but if she's convinced you're a good enough scientist, you know what? She'll let you do it. That's the sort of alternative solution that I want. New Vegas was absolutely full of these, and I think we need to have them in Fallout 4. Fallout 3, relatively, most of skills didn't really have much to do. Ultimately, you pretty much just had to use guns or other forms of offensive weapons to find the solution in the long term. Whereas Fallout New Vegas, as I think I demonstrated in my no-kill run, you can find alternative non-violent solutions to pretty much every quest in the game. So I just think that's a much better solution, and that's kind of what I'd really like to see again in Fallout 4. Let's not force people to kind of use violence to solutions. Let's find a character, if you want to play the game as a perfect pacifist, I think you should be able to. Number 12, let me kill everything. And that's not just because, you know, I've got a series that I want to be bringing back in Fallout 4, though that'd be lovely. Fallout, at its core, is a game about choice and consequence and trying to survive and build a better world in a world that is full of dubious people and conflicting ideologies, some of which you may very strongly disagree with, and you're holding a lot of very big guns. Do the maths. Do the maths, Bethesda. It would quite frankly be baffling if you didn't let us kill everyone. We should have that freedom. Fallout is about freedom. It is about consequence. We should be allowed to kill people and have to accept the consequences of what we have done. There were way too many essential unkillable characters in Fallout 3. In Skyrim, there was a ludicrous number, and it's probably one of the biggest things I didn't like about Skyrim, how there was just basically almost no bloody point starting a fight in town unless the game specifically told you to, because everyone would just turn out to be bloody immortal. Fallout New Vegas got this right. One character was required to actually give you an ending, and he was flipping software, so you were still able to kill the hardware he was inhabiting over and over and over again, so it made sense why he couldn't be killed. But other than that, no immortal characters in the whole game. That is what I want. I do not want the Essentials tag to exist in Fallout 4. Please, Bethesda. This one's really important to me. Number 13, let's have rads do something a little bit more interesting in Fallout 4. I mean, the whole radiation sickness thing impacting your stats, that's a nice idea. I want more than that. I want, if I expose myself to a ridiculous amount of radiation, my body to suffer permanent debilitating changes to my character and the way I interact with the world. Now, right now, obviously, I'm wearing the ghoul mask from Fallout 3, which is very cool. But I want this to just be a thing that happens to you if you spend too much time hanging out in radiation and not using Rad-X and Rad-Away to get rid of it. I want your character to be able to slowly degrade into ghouliness. And if you seek medical treatment, you might be able to partly reverse the effects, but regardless, a small amount of ghoulification will occur over time. And obviously that would have impacts on how people deal with you. So ghouls would be more likely to, work with you and trade with you at really favourable prices, but some humans would be prejudiced against you and some humans might just attack you on sight, particularly, say, factions that we know are not particularly fond of mutants in general. Like, we know in Fallout 3, the Brotherhood of Steel sometimes shoot at ghouls as well as super mutants, and some people, like, I think it was Willow, claimed that obviously they couldn't really, the Brotherhood didn't really bother telling the difference between the two. So there could be prejudices, but there could also be some level of advantage as well. So, for example, once you're a ghoul, radiation doesn't impact you negatively anymore. In fact, potentially, while it makes your ghoul status worse, it also means that you heal yourself really quickly in radiation. Maybe you could do that kind of glowing one radiation burst thing, and it could be a really powerful attack. Just reasons why that would be, why that could be a really interesting thing to play with. The other thing I want on a similar principle is I want being made into a super mutant to not be just like a non-standard game over like it was in the old Fallouts. I want becoming a super mutant to actually become an option you can take in the game. So if you want to become a super mutant and super mutants become effectively one of the factions in the game, you can do so. And it doesn't look out dealing with everyone else, but it has consequences. Obviously, a great many people will refuse to deal with you and shoot you on sight, and some towns won't want you in their town. But some people will, especially if you're known to them, and you can identify yourself and so forth. There could be changes made to the way the game works. So, for example, your carry weight goes up to 1,000, and I think a touch I think would be very nice would be your melee and unarmed damage goes up like 500% over what it ought to be for whatever weapon you're using. So you become incredibly strong and incredibly good at using, incredibly strong and incredibly effective at using melee weapons. Your damage threshold and resistance could be hugely increased, but you have to deal with the fact that a much larger proportion of the population of the world now wants to shoot you on sight. I think that would be a really interesting kind of touch that you could make, and also it could completely change the game insofar as super mutants stop just being like a faction that are effectively just placeholder tough bullet sponge enemies like they were in Fallout 3, and to a lesser extent Fallout New Vegas. They were at the radio tower, but they weren't at Jacobstown. But I just think it could be a really, really interesting thing to have in Fallout 4. Number 14, let's actually have the jump button do something in Fallout 4. I know, the jump button does something in Fallout 3 and New Vegas, it makes you jump, but jumping is basically completely pointless in both games. I've kind of come to what I think is one of the only times I can actually remember jumping being useful in either game, which is Minefield, where you have to get up to Arkansas, the sniper. But even then, there's stairs absolutely everywhere. Rock faces generally aren't that easy to climb. There's kind of, you can just generally walk up anything. There's just paths around. There's stairs up to any sort of high ground advantage. I just want the jump button. If we're going to have a jump button, let's actually use it for something. Because I feel like the Fallout games just haven't been using it for anything for flipping ages. And not least because it's not particularly effective as a jump button, quite frankly. The mechanics of it have never quite worked exactly as you want to. I find it very difficult to jump across places on the odd chance I do choose to want to jump. So say I want to jump off this ledge and reach that bar, that didn't actually work. So I'm not sure there's even collision detection on that thing. So the game's not set up well for jumping. This feels like it's a little bit of a sluggish response to when you jump. First person jumping is a nightmare anyway, and I spent a lot of time in first person in Fallout. So I'm just not convinced it would work, but I feel like it should do. I feel like maybe Fallout could learn something from Far Cry 4 in this regard, which is it is lovely to be able to climb places, to get up to high ground advantages if you want to be a super awesome badass sniper. And Fallout's great at making you feel like a super awesome badass sniper. So give us more opportunities to use that jump button to climb up to advantageous areas and pick off enemies from a mile over. That would be really, really cool. But I feel like that's never really been a thing in Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas. It just hasn't been... Maybe it's partly that the environments just weren't built to encourage you to climb, or maybe it's because the jump function just has never been used. But I just feel like I can't think of a single instance, main game or DLC, in 3 or New Vegas, where jumping was actually particularly useful for anything. So let's add it in. And while we're adding in functions to make the world a little bit more mobile, can we just add in some sprinting as well? I know, again, this is something that I'm pretty sure has been, in fact I'm certain I've seen this been modded in the past, but let's get sprinting added into the game. If I want to use action points to sprint, let's make that happen. I just generally want to be able to run better, to climb better. I just generally want the game to be a little bit more mobile. So if I want to run, I can run. If I want to climb, I can climb. It would just give me a lot more flexibility and freedom, which, other than I think in the one instance of actual personal character mobility, for Fallout series The Last Generation, was extremely good at. This is just one thing I want to add in to make it perfect for me. Number 15, it's time for the hacking to have an overhaul. You know what, I'm actually one of the people who really quite enjoys the hacking minigame, and I think it's got a lot more depth than people realise to it. I think it's interesting kind of using tactics like figuring out words like those that end in ing, and spotting patterns and therefore ruling out a large number of things. I think there's a lot kind of, and I think a few people don't even realise fully how it works, insofar as you look for the snippets of code, like those, that kind of remove duds or restore your allowance or do all sorts of things that make the game an awful lot more easy. So I think a large number of people just kind of completely miss that those are there, and actually, you know, that makes it a little bit more easy. There you are, allowance replenished, a bunch of duds removed. But the problem with it, fundamentally, is it takes ages to do well. And if you know how to do it properly, you can do it perfectly every time, because I've already kind of, you know, removed half the duds. And yeah, just keep removing duds. So now, basically, I can just do it by process of elimination, almost. But the problem with it is that it takes too long. And there's no way to skip it. Like lockpicking, once you get your lockpick up to a really high skill, if you come across a very easy or an easy lock container, you can just auto-do it, and it'll have like 100 or 85% chance of succeeding. So very easy locks you can just bypass. These, you just can't. It is a slow process. And I just want it to be just a little bit amended, to be honest. Unless, of course, they're planning to replace it with a pipe minigame, do not replace it with a pipe minigame. If the only other alternative is replace it with a pipe minigame, don't. Let's just keep it as it is. But seriously, I want something a little bit more interesting than this, but I don't want a flipping pipe minigame. So can we just find something that isn't either of those things for the new hacking in Fallout 4, please? Number 16, the Thorn. I love the Thorn. Let's have the Thorn back. In fact, let's actually expand the Thorn. I love kind of, yeah, betting on the fights between the different animals, so the game's like rewarding your knowledge of how strong each of the creatures that exist in the world are. I love being able to go and fight in the Thorn as well. I would actually like to be able to actually, if I could, kind of merge the Thorn and Paradise Falls from Fallout 3. So ideally, I'd like to be able to go out into the world and either, you know, bribe, shame, or enslave people. So I could take characters that I want, that I think are quite tough, and, you know, basically enslave them, capture them, and bring them here to fight in the arena for my amusement. I think I'd like that very, very much. So I love the Thorn, but I think it could also be kind of bigger than it is. So if we can, let's get a bit more Thorn going on in future. 17. Can we make pickpocketing a little bit more interesting, please? To me, pickpocketing has always bothered me. Maybe it's because the very first time that I played Fallout 3, I walked straight into Megaton, started trying to pickpocket stuff, and was immediately caught and then just shot to Billio. Maybe I don't like the fact that in Fallout you don't see what your chance of stealing something is, so it feels like a bit more of a crapshoot than any other skill does. And maybe I prefer the system in Skyrim where you at least get told a percentage of your chance to succeed. Maybe just adding that in would cheer me up low end. Maybe I prefer just something that was based on skill rather than kind of sheer pot luck, and I don't like the fact that it's sheer chance. I don't know how I want pickpocketing to change. I know I don't like the current system and I want it fixed, but honestly I'm not quite sure what I want. Just adding in a chance of success, as was in Skyrim, I think will be an excellent starting point at the very least. 18. Let's have more weapons of mass destruction just lying around for you to accidentally trigger. This is one of my favourite things in Fallout 3, actually, and I think it really kind of thematically stuck well with the idea of a post-apocalyptic society where mankind had destroyed itself through weapons of mass destruction, that at multiple points during the game you just stumbled across these relatively open, easy to access environments where you could just accidentally trigger a weapon of mass destruction, whether that was the intercontinental ballistic missile in the military base to the north, or that bombardment from the satellite, from one of the satellite arrays, or of course, most famously, blowing up Megaton. I just love the fact that that is a thing. I mean, New Vegas lacked that a little bit. It had Helios 1, of course, and the Archimedes 2 satellite weapon, but I felt like that wasn't quite as interesting because that's not a weapon that actually exists in the real world. The fact that the weapons in Fallout 3 were kind of more realistic weapons that you could just kind of trigger by accident, to me it kind of gave it a bit of a haunting horror to it. I thought it was quite lovely, and I definitely think we should have more just weapons of mass destruction lying around to accidentally be triggered while you were just pushing buttons at random. Number 19, let's talk about the ending and 3 things I want. Number 1, I want the New Vegas style ending slideshow so I actually know what happens to everyone. Fallout 3's ending is okay, but the fact that it doesn't tell you what's going to happen to all the communities is a bit of a waste to my mind. I really want to be told what the consequences of all my choices are going to be. 2, I actually want post-game. I want post-end game, which obviously Fallout 3 with Broken Steel did very nicely, and New Vegas sadly never had, which is a shame, because obviously having done the big dramatic sacrificey thing in Fallout 3, I do actually like being able to wander around the world and see the consequence of my actions. So I'd like to be told what the long-term consequences of my actions are, but I'd also like to be able to see the short-term immediate consequences of my actions by just wandering around in. And thirdly, I want a proper climactic DLC. Now, I know that's very, very difficult, because Fallout New Vegas did that pretty well with Lonesome Road, but as a result, maybe after you've done Lonesome Road, the dam feels a bit anticlimactic in some ways. Fallout 3 maybe struggled a bit more there, because though it had a kind of interesting thematic ending to the main game, Broken Steel, though obviously the destruction of the Enclave base is cool, and Broken Steel in general is a really fun expansion, nonetheless, I find that it's just not quite a fitting end to the game. It'll be really difficult to, of course, have a normal game ending where it feels like a proper satisfying wrap-up, and then you have another proper satisfying wrap-up to the exact same game for your final act of DLC, but I'm sure there would be a way to do it, and I'm hoping Fallout 4 finds a way, because I would like all 3 of those things for Fallout 4's ending. Number 20, random events. This I loved in Fallout 3, and I thought it was a shame that Fallout New Vegas took these out, and I would like to see them again. So Fallout 3 was basically, there were huge amounts of spots on the map where a random event occurred, and as you would logically guess, obviously you basically drew a random card for what that random event was going to be, which meant things were very often not in the position that you were expecting them to be, and you could run into all sorts of random stuff that you weren't expecting at any given moment. To my mind, it just made the Wasteland a little bit more interesting and meant that a whole bunch more random stuff could just happen to you, which I thought was very, very welcome, because it kind of increased the sense of fear, which suited Fallout 3, but it also just increased replayability and just made the game a little bit more interesting and tense to explore the Wasteland, because you had no idea what was going to be appearing at any given moment. So here I am in a brand new save file, just heading down towards the Super Duper Mark, and what have I run into? I've run into a couple of just outcasts who are just chilling out here. Now, I've run into in this area in the past, I've run into all sorts of things. I've run into cannibals, I've run into ants, I've run into animals, and you can just run into pretty much anything at all in this area. I think that's pretty cool. And then just head down to the Super Duper Market down the road there. And what have we got this time? We have someone is being shot at. Who are you? On this occasion, it just looks like it's some Raiders versus an iBot. I'll take the iBot side, why not? Yep, on this occasion it was just a whole bunch of Raiders versus an iBot. And quite frankly, that suits me incredibly well, because as a new character, I could just come here and now all of a sudden, I've got some food and some armor that might be better than what I'm wearing. So, in general, we're in a good state. Yeah, I've just got probably what would have been my first frag grenade. And that doesn't happen all the time. I've seen flipping a trader with a Deathclaw, I think, in this area once in the past. And oh, a sawed-off shotgun. Not a fantastic weapon, but way better than what I've got. And I just love the fact that it's completely random and that didn't have to happen. It makes it much more of a relief and much more welcome that that happened sheerly by chance. Now, some people won't like that because it means, like, if you get lucky, you might get some really good draws and the game will be a bit too easy. And if you get unlucky, then you might run into a ludicrously difficult fight very early into the game that just kind of isn't particularly fun. But To me, I like the way that it did it. I thought it added replayability. I thought it made the game more interesting. I would like to see this back again. Number 21, let's do something with the underwater. I love the addition of the rebreather in Fallout New Vegas. I love the fact that when you get it, you feel like a whole new frontier has opened up to you, that this whole area that previously you couldn't access because of your oxygen limits suddenly is open to you. And I hate the fact that you go there and there's literally nothing in it. Pretty much the entirety of Lake Mead is empty and boring. You can't catch fish. There's no loot at the bottom of the lake. There's one little cage with like a few little bits and pieces in it. And then, arguably even more annoyingly, there's no enemies that can actually do anything to you underwater. Lake lurks can only attack while they're on ground. If they actually come into the water after you, they can't do anything. Maybe I just really desperately want the Lake Mead monster to be a thing. And I just want, I want to be able to go down into a deep sea trench. And I want to be able to find a massive monster and have to fight it with harpoon guns or something. I don't know. I just think it would be really cool if underwater was more of a thing. Because I like the sneaking and stealthy sorts of Fallout, and I always play sneaky, stealthy characters. I would just love to be able to get a rebreather and then just kind of dive into a river and then swim through an outlet pipe to infiltrate a enemy base of some description, and then just kind of pop out of the water and shoot someone as an assassination, then jump back in the water and swim back out. There'd be nothing they'd be able to do to stop me. It'd be really awesome and badass, but sadly we haven't had that yet. So, you know what? Let's have the rebreather back in Fallout 4, but let's actually put something in the water so that once you've got it, there's actually something worth finding. Number 22, let's have more areas that are little Easter egg areas. So in other words, areas where you don't actually have to go, but there's interesting stuff anyway. I know there's the old debate about Fallout 3 versus Fallout New Vegas, which basically says Fallout New Vegas has loads more quests, so therefore it's better. The problem with Fallout New Vegas' many quests is because every single area in the game, therefore, is, well, with a few exceptions, is tied to a quest. So therefore you get given the quest and you go to the area because the quest tells you to. Fallout 3 has an awful lot more areas where if you just do what the quests tell you to do, you'd never have discovered them. So here we are in Arlington Cemetery, and if I remember correctly, there isn't a single quest that sends you here, or into this part of the map full stop. You can come across here just by kind of stumbling across it, but if I remember correctly, if you just kind of do what the game tells you to, you'd never have found it. This is just what you find by exploring. And it's an interesting distinctive area, enough that it's spawned its own urban myth. Some people talk about a ghost that you see under certain conditions, and the various conditions that have to be fulfilled for the ghost to appear here, even though, no ghost has ever really appeared as far as anyone's actually been able to record or verify. So this is interesting enough on its own that this is an area which I think a fair few people watching might never have seen. Even though it is, of course, in the very end slate of Fallout 3's ending. But many people might not realise it's actually in the game. But there's lots of other interesting things about it too. Like, did you know that in this house, which is here in Arlington Cemetery, that there's a shrine to Lincoln in their basement, complete with fresh flowers, which have mysteriously stayed fresh after all these centuries, wine, a knife, for some potentially disturbing reason of blood sacrifice, or at the other end of this cemetery, the perfectly normal factory here that is in fact Mama Dolce's, an Italian sauce production facility, a location that was used pre-war as a Chinese infiltration and spying centre. And indeed, if you go inside, you find ghouls still dressed up as Chinese soldiers, and indeed they speak to you in Chinese. I bet lots of people have never seen that before. I think moments like that really make Fallout 3 stand out to me, because in Fallout New Vegas, I'd say, is it really a weakness, or is it just an alternative way of doing things? In Fallout New Vegas, if you do every quest in the game, then with a few small exceptions, you'll have seen pretty much all the content the game has to offer. Fallout 3, you can complete every quest in the entire game, and there is a huge amount that you will not have seen. If you go exploring, you can find all these areas, and I think that maybe captures a sense of exploration and a large-scale world and wonder a little bit better, and I think that's kind of interesting. So I like the huge number of quests that Fallout New Vegas gives you. I'd rather have that than the smaller number that Fallout 3 gives you, but equally I would like a bit more of the Fallout 3 style areas that are unnecessary for any quest, that you just stumble across, that are interesting and massive and just fun to explore around in. Here's an area you'll all recognise. Obviously we're at the balcony at the top of Tenpenny Towers for number 23, and obviously this is one of the houses, the player housing that you can get. in Fallout 3. And isn't it just wonderful, with a beautiful sunset and this gorgeous view that you've got that stretches on for miles and miles and miles. Stunning vista. Now let's step inside our room. Ah yes, no windows. Number 23, windows. For the love of God, please. Give us windows. The downside of Fallout 3, just about every interior environment doesn't have windows because it's behind a loading zone, so they haven't loaded the outside world, so you can't see out to it. The best that you get is kind of like blinds that completely cover the view, so you get an idea whether it's day or night by virtue of how much light's creeping around the edge, but that's it. I just desperately want actual windows. I've just never enjoyed the player homes in Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. The presidential suite in Fallout New Vegas in the Lucky 38 is even bloody worse by comparison. This is supposed to be like the elite room that you've been given by Mr. House in order to like win you over and demonstrate how much he cares for you, but I don't know. The particle effects in the air to me make it just seem like it's filthy. It's just incredibly filthy. It's not desperately well lit. Half of the lights in here don't work. And once again, there's no flipping windows. And this is true for every single one of the elite suites in all of the casinos. None of them have windows. It's horrible. I really hate this. And I never use this as my base of operations just because it's, well, one, it takes bloody ages to get to because it's hidden behind multiple load zones, so it takes ages to actually get to your own home base, which is really inconvenient, but it's just not a nice place to be. It's even more of a kick in the teeth when you head up to the cocktail lounge for the first time, and you realise that up in the cocktail lounge, actually, there are these massive, huge windows that let in tons of light, and the area is just light and lovely, and those kind of horrible dust effect in the air, that's not a thing in this room. Just very often I will just use this as my base rather than the presidential suite because I like it a lot better, and I just do the various containers around here I just use for my storage. Of course, every item in Fallout New Vegas has effectively infinite storage in it, so you don't actually need like big chests or anything to store all your stuff. So yeah, I just want a player base that's like this. I just want a player base that's got these lovely big windows. And it cannot be that difficult to do. I'm sure the previous generation there were various tech problems that meant it couldn't be done. But please, let's just get a beautiful big player house that looks like this next time. Number 24, here we are at Paradise Falls. And I think for number 24, allow us, to quote Dumbledore, to make the choice between what is right and what is easy. The slavers of Paradise Falls have absolutely no moral justification for what they do. They are just greedy, selfish, immoral bastards. And you're allowed to work with them anyway. You're allowed to sell multiple characters into slavery. You can go around just enslaving random NPCs, or you can sell, actually, there's 2 children in this game that you can sell into slavery for cold, hard cash. And I just like that as an option, not because I think it's fun or interesting or anything. It suited my purposes in Fallout 3 Kill Everything to be able to do that. But I like the fact that the game basically just says, hey, if you want money and you're willing to be a complete bastard, then there will be people to help facilitate that. It didn't really happen so much in Fallout New Vegas, because the 2 factions that could most clearly be identified as evil, the Fiends, you couldn't work with them. They'd just attack you on sight, and it's a shame to my mind that you can't in some way work with the Fiends of Vault 3 a little bit better, given they're the only ones that won't attack you. Or there's the Legion, who can be slightly justified, albeit in a very slim way, by things like Dale the Trader in the Legion camp saying things to you like, actually, while the Legion's purge initially is extremely brutal, actually Arizona's really safe now for traders and it's a good place to live. So, arguably the Legion can be justified on those grounds. The Slavers of Paradise Falls don't have any of that. They are just selfish, horrendous people, but you're allowed to work with them anyway rather than them just being, cannon fodder for you to shoot. And I quite like that. I really like that, in fact. So I like having that freedom to be a bastard if you want to do. Let's have more of that. Number 25, let's actually leave America for at least some of the DLC. I don't mind Fallout 4's main game being in America, that's fine. But can we please leave the US and actually see somewhere else in the world? And I'm going to make a case here for the fact I think that place ought to be Britain. And that's not just because, I'm British and I'd like to see post-apocalyptic Britain. I think a British DLC for Fallout 4 could be very, very interesting. So it would completely change the terms of the game. For those of you who've never lived in Britain, we have a lot less guns over here. Like, for the vast majority of the time, even our police don't carry guns. Our police carry nightsticks and sometimes tasers. But even then, like, our society is very suspicious of police with guns for the most part. So only a very small number of highly trained elite troops called into dangerous situations actually have guns on them. So guns would be incredibly rare, and not only incredibly rare, but viewed incredibly suspiciously. In Britain, if someone rolled up and they were just holding a gun, even one just slung over their shoulder, you would be afraid of that person, because they've got something that generally you almost never see. I mean, I cannot remember the last time, other than police at the airport or when I was in central London outside a main government building, I have actually seen anyone, including police, holding guns. I've seen police at airports and outside government buildings holding guns. Other than that, I don't know if I've ever seen anyone actually holding a gun. I'm not sure if I've ever seen in real life a civilian holding a gun. I actually think I might not have done. But yes, I think this will be a really interesting kind of change to how Fallout actually works, that you would live in a society where you basically have no choice but to use melee and unarmed skills, and someone with a gun has a huge, ridiculous advantage, and it will be incredibly rare. It's something that would make civilians fear you, but also other people who wanted to gain an upper hand, you'd suddenly become a major target for them. I just love the idea of, a DLC where possession of a gun is something incredibly rare, incredibly powerful, but also something that makes you the biggest target in the British wasteland. So come on, let's have some British DLC in Fallout 4. You know it would be amazing. For number 26, I have a challenge for you, ladies and gentlemen, which is, I'm currently playing Fallout 3. Where am I? And you have absolutely no idea, and in fact no one will ever have any idea, because, quite frankly, we are in a metro tunnel. And in Fallout 3, there are about, I don't know, probably 20 flipping miles of metro tunnels, and all of them are functioning identical. And you know what there's going to be? There's going to be raiders, or there's going to be ghouls. And if you're really, really lucky, there might just be dogs. This was easily the worst part of Fallout 3, to my mind. The fact that these flipping metro tunnels, you were constantly going through them, they all look the same, they never had anything that interesting in them, only a tiny number had any good loot. For the most part, metro tunnels had appallingly bad loot. They were confusing and difficult to navigate. I mean, worst of all to my mind is the fact that they made the DC area much less fun to explore, because you were constantly blocked off by buildings and thus had to go the long way round and head underground into these areas that were completely uninteresting and not fun to run through. Just endless grey tunnels. Like, we give video games a bit of shit sometimes if they kind of have a really boring, uninteresting sewer level. Well, Fallout 3, for all that it was an amazing game, was constantly bloody sending you into sewer levels. Constantly. And they were very difficult to navigate. There's no way that you intuitively would find your way through. You just basically had to constantly rely on going to the Pip-Boy and checking the map to figure out whether you were still going in the right direction or not. And that's just really annoying that that was what you had to do. We need to get rid of those. Fallout New Vegas had a couple of small areas like this. I think it had only one or two, but I'm glad that it got rid of them, and we need to not have these again. Or if we do have these again, they need to somehow be much easier and clearer to navigate and figure out where you are. Whether that involves some sort of, say, London Underground style system where the lines are more clearly color coded, so you know where you are and where you're going. Or otherwise, we kind of have a couple of different types of transport system, like a tram network versus a train network, or there's far fewer tunnels, so they're easier to navigate. We just need to have less of these bloody tunnels. Please, no metro network with interminable bloody identical tunnels. Though, incidentally, while we are on the topic of trains, number 27, trains, or just transport in general. This was the biggest thing I was really hoping would be in New Vegas, but wasn't. After we kind of saw all the train tracks laid about, and all these beautiful, massive trains just sitting on them. And then there was all the story about the reason the Powder Gangers had been brought to Nevada in the first place was to kind of help set up all the train lines. I was really hoping that we'd go somewhere with the whole story about trains, but they never did. I know this is a really, really minor thing, but basically I just want a big subplot involving infrastructure. Because in Fallout New Vegas, you spend a lot of time kind of helping factions get set up and trying to build the world and so forth. And no way of building up a world or building up a civilization is more important in some ways than getting the transport network sorted out, getting the transport and the the ability to transport materials and men, getting that infrastructure built, set up. I'd just love it if that could be a thing in Fallout 4. If you could like spend time getting the equipment and the money and the expertise and the technology and stuff like that, and just getting that set up. And as the trains start to run, then logically, you know, factions will thrive and traders will have more goods and new areas will become available to you and new characters will appear on the map who are supposed to have migrated from other areas. I think it just kind of feeds into the fact that I want a bigger, richer world where you can kind of have more impact on it. But I'll get to that later. But maybe this is partly because I love trains. So let's have more trains. Trains in Fallout 4. Let's have a proper transport network that starts off in terrible shape, but you can freely choose as a completely optional side quest to get it built up. And then you can have trains going all over the map and they'll be awesome. Number 28, let's have some more interesting vault stories. Obviously, I love the vaults and we have to keep them because they're just such a part of the Fallout experience. But I've had enough of vaults where you just go in and just, you know, oh, they were drugging the air, so everyone went mad because of the drugged air. Instead, I think we need some more really interesting, dark, deep vaults that take you to some interesting places. Obviously, many of you all have recognised I'm in Vault 11 and the Democracy in Action unmarked quest there. That's just a wonderful, wonderful quest, just told through some really good audio logs, the beautiful election posters that if you read them should immediately tell you something's gone wrong, where, yeah, Haley is a known adulterer and communist sympathiser, so vote Haley! It's just a lovely, well-told, interesting story with obviously a fantastic payoff when you get down into the sacrificial chamber. If you've never seen it, I thoroughly recommend looking it up or playing it yourself. I absolutely love the story of Vault-Tec and their social experiments. I think the really interesting social experiments that went wrong in particularly dramatic, fascinating ways are well worth exploring further. But let's have more interesting, in-depth one. Let's have more Tranquility Lane. Let's have more Vault 11. Number 29, I think it is time that we need to get rid of the quest marker once and for all. I've never enjoyed the quest marker, and I think we need to find a new solution for it, quite frankly. So I've just selected the quest Return to Senders that's telling me to go and upgrade a whole bunch of ranger stations around the wasteland. So even though I've never been anywhere west of Camp McCarran effectively, nonetheless, Camp Foxtrot is now clearly highlighted and the marker will take me straight there, albeit as the crow flies. And that's really annoying. How do I know where Ranger Station Foxtrot is? I've never been there before. I've never been to this whole area of the map before. It strikes me as weird that my Pip-Boy just sort of magically knows where literally everything is, including vast numbers of camps I've never actually been to. I've been thinking about alternatives for a while, and I think the one I'd most like would be when someone tells you to do something, or asks you to go and find something, they can't tell you exactly where it is, obviously, because this is a society where the old world's being rediscovered and the new world is being rapidly built. People don't travel very far because people are just trying to survive. So, for example, someone who tells you to go to Jacobstown might be able to tell you, oh yeah, I know it's to the west of New Vegas, but I don't know any more than that. Then if you head to the west of New Vegas, someone could tell you, hey, there's a road that leads up into the mountains, that might take you in the right direction. And then if you go and follow this road, then you'd find your way to Jacobstown. And in Jacobstown, you can immediately find Marcus, and Marcus could straight away tell you, oh yeah, the person you're looking for is this person, he's in this building, go over there. It just makes way more sense to me that you'd actually have to do more investigation. Maybe it's because I've just been playing too much LA Noire and other investigation and police games like that recently, but I just like the idea that rather than the Pip-Boy just telling you where to go, you should actually have to proactively hunt it out. I've always wanted that system. And finally, number 30, and I think this one just kind of sums up what I've been saying about a few points in general, which is just overall, I would like a more responsive, interactive world. This was probably one of the things that did bother me about Fallout 3. The fact that though you could like do quests, it never felt like you were making a difference at all. I just always constantly felt like everything I did wasn't making any change to anyone's lives. If you saved everyone's lives, what do they say? Well, someone will be along tomorrow who'll probably kill us anyway. Fallout New Vegas, I like the fact that you could feel like you were making a difference. I'd like to take that to its extreme in Fallout 4. I'd like the world to react to you in all sorts of different ways. If I want a faction to be destroyed, I want to be able to like sneak into their camp, assassinate their leaders without anyone knowing it was me. I want to be able to steal their medical supplies and poison their food stores and do other things to undermine them and just slowly weaken them in a way that then gets represented out in the outer world. So, like in Bitter Springs, up there where we're standing outside at the moment, when you get there and they say they need help, they say they need medical supplies and food supplies and you to deal with snipers and so forth. Why can't you do that in reverse? Why can't you like go into a Legion camp and steal their food and then as a consequence like they have to abandon that position? It happens a little bit in New Vegas in the early days that you can have a bigger effect on the world. So for example, you know, you can kick the Powder Gangers out of the NCR correctional facility. You can kick the Legion out of Nelson and you can kick the NCR out of Helios 1, and if you do, a couple of days later, the Legion will have occupied it. That sort of thing I really love, but there's less of that in the later game, which is kind of a shame, because I'd like to have seen more of that sort of thing. But yeah, I just want a big, responsive world. And there are moments in New Vegas where I think you get that. There are less in Fallout 3. So just overall, I want a world where I can very slowly pick apart a faction if I want to, or I could do bigger things to help support the growth of a faction or the growth of the world in general. I want to be able to build transport infrastructures. I want to be able to do things to help traders, to help support them so they'll carry more stock and more advanced weaponry. I want to be able to actually help scientists pioneer new techniques that will lead to the creation of new technologies and new things that I can use. I want to be able to build my own weapons, build my own armor. I want to be able to just make everything by myself. I want my world to be unique and affected by so many different variables that there is basically no chance that my experience of Fallout 4 will be the same as anyone else's, and indeed it would be almost impossible for me to have an identical experience of Fallout 4 2 times in a row. That's what I want, and I think it would be immensely difficult to do, but in the end, that is what I would like more than anything. So there you are, ladies and gentlemen. That is my 30 things that I would like out of Fallout 4. Obviously, I would love to hear what things you would like to add in to Fallout 4, and we can just live in hope that at least some of them come to pass, or at the absolute bare minimum, it's not a bloody MMO. So yes, I will be down in the comments very much in this video. I'd really like to discuss kind of what your thoughts are on some of those things, because some of these I'm a little unsure about, and I think I kind of said it on a couple of points that I wasn't exactly sure. Even though I didn't like what was currently there, I wasn't sure what I'd like instead. So I'd love to discuss in the comments what you think about all of that. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, I've been John. This has been Many a True Nerd, and this has been my list of things that I would love to see in Fallout 4. Thank you very much, and goodbye.